Okay, so one of the things we do on camp every day is we sing and we dance and we carry on just a little bit. It's really important when we're doing this with the kids that the kids see us being more excited about it than they are. If they see us like, no, I'm a bit too cool for this, then the kids will be obviously thinking the same thing. But if they're like, wow, all these really cool grown-ups are right into this, this must be cool, and they will get on board. So tonight we're going to give you a couple of opportunities to show us how excited you can be when it comes to singing and dancing. So we're going to do one of our favourite songs from this year's camp, Jeremiah 29:11, and I'm going to let Sharon... You will be whistling it.
Plans I have for you, declares the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11. And then in between bit, it's a little bit sort of like Hawaiian beachy feel, so we do a bit of a hula in the middle. So look around, there are a few people in the room that already know it, otherwise try and see me if you can. Anyway, yeah, so we'll try it for me. I've been waiting to try it earlier. I wish I could whistle.
I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Whoa.
Now you have to tell me what.
Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Whoa. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Whoa. Jeremiah 29:11. Jeremiah 29:11.
And we're literally going to do that every single day, and you will find people just at roundabouts of the day just walking around going forever and ever and ever.
Thanks, Sharon. Let's give Sharon a clap. So, for those of you that are new, one of the roles we have on camp is the J-Zone coordinator. It's the person who leads the singing and does the stories and things like that. And you may have worked out that that's going to be Sharon on our camp this year. However, we are looking for an apprentice. We are looking for an apprentice because next year Sharon is abandoning us shamelessly. What are you doing instead?
I'm going on placement for
Oh, university?
university. Quit uni.
Yeah, quit uni, do camp. We do know a young lady who's not here tonight who's 24 camps.
Yes.
24 camps. Basically, every time she has a week off, she goes on camp.
Yeah.
That's pretty much her life at the moment. It's pretty exciting. Sharon's not quite there yet, but she's thinking about it. All right, so we did send out some videos. Hands up if you got the link to those videos. Oh, a few people. We actually watched them at the last training. I'm not going to put them up again. So if you haven't had a chance to look at those, or if you're really new and I haven't sent them out to you yet, so anyone who's only joined up in the last week or two may not have got that email. I can't remember exactly when I sent it out. Don't panic. I'll send them out again. So we'll just move on. Now, the next thing I've got on here, we talk about some stuff that's actually in the training manual. Hands up who's seen the training manual. I know the table back there has. I know the table down here has. So, yeah, if you haven't got a digital one yet, when I send out the link for the videos, the links for the videos, I will also attach the digital one. Because it's just easier to just send emails to all my volunteers. If I send you stuff you don't need because you've already got it, feel free to disregard it. No need to send me angry emails going, I already got that, what are you doing? It's just because I don't want to have to work out who has got things and who hasn't. So I just send them to everyone. It just makes my life a lot easier. And I'm a big fan of efficiencies. That's the way I like to think about it. It's not about being easy, it's about being efficient. So if you could turn to section 3. It says building awareness. Oh, Sharon's already there. Give Sharon a clap. Well done, Sharon. Oh, they're not very enthusiastic, are they? Yeah, that's where I'm going. I'm going to the chocolates. Now, Titan, Racer or double time?
Titan, please.
Titan, okay. No, you're not Sharon. You have to earn it.
I should have gotten at least 3, but I only got
Cheers,
1.
bro. Oh.
You got one. That's good. So if you have a look at section 3, it's talking about raising awareness of abuse and neglect. Now, one of the things we do with our training manual is we go to what I would call, and it sounds a bit negative, but I'm not being negative, we go to lowest common denominator. We assume people don't have any experience of this stuff because we recognise that for some of our volunteers they don't have any experience of this stuff. I know that some of you have some experience of this stuff. I know that some of you are training to be social workers and equivalents, so you've already been learning a lot about this kind of stuff. But by all means, feel free to jump in and join in. So I'm not going to read it through. That's boring. I'm not a big fan of boring. And I'm fairly confident everyone here can read. Is that a reasonable assumption to make? Yeah, sorry, Chelsea. It's the glasses. Maybe if you swap glasses with Sharon, that'll make things easier. Let's try it. No? Yes?
Do we just look the same?
Does it help?
I can't say anything.
It doesn't help.
You're blind.
But what I'm going to do is I'll just draw your attention to a couple of points that are in there, and I'll encourage you, while I'm talking, feel free to read. Don't feel like you have to look at me all the time. It's bad enough my wife and my children have to look at me all the time. I'm glad that we don't have a lot of mirrors in our house, so I don't have to look at me all the time. So we're looking here, really it's about understanding child development, as the heading says. And what we're looking at is, as children develop, there's basically a process that most kids, we'll call it the normal process that kids go through. But what happens is, when kids experience trauma, as many of you know, that process can be interrupted. So what we've got there, we're talking about the needs. Many of you will have heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Hands up if that's a familiar phrase. Just about everyone. Fantastic. The idea with that is really, you can't focus on the stuff higher up the pyramid until you know the stuff at the bottom is right. So our kids may have grown up in a situation where those basic physiological needs were not being met. Right? They weren't warm. They didn't have the shelter necessarily that they needed. They didn't get the sleep that they needed. For those who don't know, I'm a primary teacher. We've got a young man, very nice young boy, from a family that's struggling a bit. Last couple of mornings he's come into school at 11 o'clock because he's fallen asleep in the car on the way to school and they haven't been able to wake him up. Because of whatever's happening at home at night time, for whatever reason, he can't sleep. Now, it could be because he doesn't feel safe, it could be because he's worried about things, but I know there's a lot of stuff going on there. And so for him, he's not even getting those things right at the bottom. So he can't be thinking about, the social stuff. Am I being accepted by the group? Because he's too worried about, am I going to get enough sleep tonight? Am I going to be safe at home? And that's one of the things, so it's all there, and I'm going to keep moving on. So it's just something to be aware of, I guess. It's just there for your awareness. When we're dealing with our campers, sometimes we think, gee, they're 10 or 11 or 9 or whatever it might be, and we kind of have an expectation that they should be at a certain level in their development, but there's a good chance that they won't be. And we need to be aware of that and not punish them for it. You know, these kids aren't being naughty or bad necessarily. They just can't. You know, it's one of those things. They were talking on the radio tonight about phrases that people use, and one of them I think was, oh, I just can't. I just can't. And for a lot of these kids, they actually can't. Over the page, you've got Erickson's stages of psychosocial development. Sounds very fancy, but it's in there. It talks about the outcomes. It talks about the important events. It talks about the basic conflicts at those different levels. And his theory is essentially that major elements of human personality arise at critical times, and these elements result from an interplay between their needs and their surroundings. So, for example, the newborn is utterly dependent on caregivers. If the needs are met in a loving and consistent manner, the infant develops with an overriding sense of trust. If their needs are not met like that, then the mistrust. And that's when you get those kids that don't trust anything we say. And it's not a case of, I don't want to, they just can't, because they haven't learnt to be trusted. Great's probably not the right word, but I was doing some work recently with Berry Street. Hands have go to Berry Street, fantastic. They have their own schools that they're starting, and as part of that they have what's called the Berry Street Educational Model. And as part of that, they take teachers from other schools and show them how they do things. And it's all about what's called trauma-informed practice. And one of the things they talked about is, as an infant, when we're being held by our parents, the parents are co-regulating with us. So the parent's heartbeat, the parent's breathing, that's the normal that that infant knows. And so that becomes the normal for that infant just through the environment, because that's what they're living and experiencing. So if that infant is either not being held, then they're not getting that at all. Or if they're being held by someone that's constantly in a state of fear, constantly high on drugs, whatever, then their normal is very different. You know, when you're going through those kind of stuff, you know, you can have a pulse rate of 100, 120. And that infant develops that. That becomes their baseline pulse rate, is what for most people would be, I'm in quite a high level of anxiety yet. And some of our kids come in like that. They're at that constant level of anxiety because that's what the development's done for them. So because they're already there, it doesn't take them very much to get over the top. So it says here, every child at SCKC is chronologically a middler, but where are they psychosocially? It talks about the dimensions of trust, autonomy, initiative and industry. It can blossom in social surroundings that consistently offer safety, love, acceptance and close personal attention. And that's what we do on camp. That's why we have the one-to-one. That's why we have the buddies that we have, because we want to give those kids every opportunity we possibly can. And if there's a leader whose only job is to be there for that camper, you can't get much more better than that in terms of that close personal attention. There will, of course, be kids that don't fit the previous generalities, and it talks about there some examples. So a 7-year-old may be developmentally arrested or delayed and may be the functional equivalent of a preschooler. Often you have children that seem quite mature. They talk about the phrase being street smart, but actually developmentally and maybe even emotionally, they might only be 2 or 3 years old. They might be biological 7 or 8. They might be able to make their own way around town and feed themselves if they need to. But that emotional and social development can be really, really low. So there's some more information there. It gives a contrast of an 11-year-old who might be big, bright, early mature, found the resources to thrive under adverse conditions. So actually the functional equivalent of an adolescent. So it can go the other way too. We talk about those kids that have had to grow up too fast. And there's some stuff there. And it gives some examples of the trauma that may have come from that. While many of the children who qualify to attend our camps are developmentally delayed, could be emotional, could be intellectual, could be social, could be physical, others are resilient who are progressing normally and even thriving. This means that a range of children at any camp could extend developmentally from like a 3-year-old through to a 15-year-old, even though we just take 7 to 11. And it talks about how trauma can impact that flow of human development there. And over the page, it gives some telltale signs. So you will probably see some of that stuff in some of our kids on camp. That's not for you to panic or stress or worry. Or think, oh, I've got to do something. I've got to fix this kid. I've got to, make a difference. You are making a difference just by being there. This is really just for your information. You might see that eye gaze avoidance. You might see that lack of friendliness. You might see that fearful withdrawal and flinching. What you will see, and I can promise you this, is that there will be kids that come in with this, and by the end of the week, you see none of this. Because they have just developed so much, they've been able to relax and just be themselves. What then can happen is Friday, when we've got to take them home again, it all starts to come back down again. But we'll get into that at another session. And there's some more information there. Have a read of that. Trust leads to activity. The kids will be much more involved when they know they can trust us. And that's why it's so important. All right. So we've got on the next few pages some information on different types of abuse. There's physical abuse, there's neglect, there's sexual abuse, and there's emotional abuse. So there's 4 types. So what I would like to see is 4 groups. Can we do 4 groups? They'll be pretty big groups. Can you handle it? Are you up for it? Maybe these 2 tables here make a group. Maybe those 2 tables there make a group. And maybe you guys come and join these. No, wait, 1. You guys be a group. 1, 2, 3, and then you guys and Matt, maybe you join those guys to make the 4th group. All right, so what we're going to do, each group should have nominated a spokesperson. I'm going to pass that around so that we get the spokesperson's voice. You could go a couple of ways. If you want, you could get someone sitting next to you to hold it close to you. You can hang it around your neck if you want to. It needs to be reasonably close though. Don't put it over there somewhere because then it won't pick you up as well. So seeing as these guys are mostly experienced campers, you get to go first. Who's sharing? All right. So let's,
Do I have to stand up?
as we say at our school, let's show respect by tracking the speaker. So Melissa's going to share and tell us what her group learned.
All right, so our topic was physical abuse, and we spoke about how physical abuse is non-accidental physical harm, and it's one of the most noticeable abuses because you can see it on the child. And the noticeable abuse can include hitting, burns, bruises, cuts, bites, black eyes, grazes, scabs, fractures, and lots of injuries. So, you can see, they've got lots of injuries at once. And the possible impacts we found was they have fear of people, especially usually adults. They get very jumpy. They get retaliative. Thank you. They have a lack of confidence. They have shame, and they usually tend to lie more to avoid future harm. They usually tend to run away a lot or try and make sure there's somewhere where they can have an escape route. They tend to have more of a fear of authoritative figures like police, all that sort of stuff. They have anger and depression. They have unrealistic expectations of themselves, and they're harder to interact with. And they feel that they may get judged unfairly by adults and needing to position themselves to be able to escape physically and emotionally.
Thank you, Melissa. Well done. All right, we'll go clockwise because clockwise is the way you should always go. Who's sharing for this group?
All right, apparently I've been nominated.
There you go, hold that.
Excellent, I'm going to stand up because I'm used to standing up presenting. We did emotional abuse. Now, we define this more as an internal abuse. This would relate to the kid on an internal level where they would be mistreated from a verbal prospect or something they've visually cited as a younger child, thus affecting them at a later state. So we've got basically being, I can't read your writing here, Brad. Good work. Experiencing emotional blackmail through early childhood. You can't see it on the outside, but you can see it internally. They're known for manipulatism.
Manipulation.
Manipulation, all right. They're quite often withdrawn and very introverted from friends, family and society later down the track. Social exclusion, lack of picking up on social cues, and bipolar sort of tendencies. So their highs are highs, their lows are lows. Basically emotional control due to anxiety and stress. Lack of receiving love they need. Obviously having too much apathy in their life from an early level or an early age group. Lack of empathy. Yep, excellent. Is that all we need?
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's what you got.
Sure,
Well,
yeah, awesome. Passing the torch. Passing the torch. Don't be afraid.
Apparently it's me. Okay, so we had sexual abuse. This form of abuse can be direct, as in inappropriate touching, or indirect, such as pornography. It can affect a child's appearance in many ways. We talked about there was no set of... Every child can be different, so it's not as if we're sort of looking for one set of symptoms. Every child, it can affect a child in multiple ways. There's no typical set of behaviours, obviously, because every child is different, but the most frequently observed behaviour is fantasy or daydreaming. We also talked about internal and external forms of reaction. So some children will internalise, others will externalise, and that's as far as we got.
Fantastic. Good luck. Pass it on to the arm.
Right, last chance.
Just do it.
Sounds like it's you, Greg.
I got army volunteered as well. All right.
Voluntold, I think is the phrase.
What's it called?
Voluntold.
Voluntold. Right. Something I'll remember, I'm sure. We were talking about neglect, which we discussed was really the failure to provide the basic needs of the child. So when we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is some of the basic stuff that neglect shows in as not being received by the child. And that's just the basics like food, clothing, shelter, education, or importantly medical attention as it might be needed. So how this might impact them is going to be pretty significant, obviously. It's going to show up in the areas of health problems, poor hygiene, lack of food or even starvation. Developmental issues are going to be common. They're going to act out in different ways. Sometimes they might act out really aggressively. Sometimes they might be acting out to get lots of attention. Or they could be the extreme opposite, where they're actually going and becoming really quite withdrawn. So we kind of think that the behavioural issues might be quite extreme, sort of potentially to one way or the other. They might be inclined to try and save food if they feel like that there's a scarcity sort of mentality. Probably going to struggle with socialisation or being able to, just make friends and just connect with people if they're not able to do that in what should be their safe environment at home. Or on the opposite side, they could become really clingy or quite reliant, like, really reaching out for some of that emotional connection, or somebody just to, show them some care. They might struggle with learning or concentrating, so particularly in a classroom environment or a sitting environment where they need to be sort of listening, that might be a struggle. They might also act younger, or they might act older. So, and I think Daniel was talking about that before, where their development might actually be out of whack with where they are as a child. And I think we talked about friendships, and really importantly, lack of trust. They can't trust at home. They're probably not going to be able to trust out of home either. That was it.
Thanks very much. Four speakers for being so brave and come and choose a topic. Thanks, Greg. Well done. One of the things we love to do at camp is positive reinforcement. Unfortunately, you will not be allowed to carry a bag of lollies around with you to give them to the kids throughout the day. You'll just have to find another way to do that. However, as a camp director at training meetings, sugar is my friend. So there you go. Thank you, Sharon. All right, what we're going to do now, we've been sitting for a little while. I think it's time for...
Singing time with
Sharon. Singing time with Sharon. Singing time with Sharon. Yeah. We'll win them over eventually. That's my favourite part.
Yeah, so basically just do the actions of what you're singing. It'll make sense when you hear it. Which I've never seen this live before. Right?
It was the one on YouTube.
Hopefully it's got the words on the screen.
I hope so too.
Oh yeah, good. Can you tell me how low can your
belly go? How wide can your arms stretch? Knowing you're people watch high. God's love is amazing. God's love is amazing. God's giving is amazing. God amazing love. Shout to Jesus. Shout to Jesus. Come on, everybody in the house, let's hear it. Jumping lazy, cussing baby, everybody going crazy. Come on, everybody, let's hear you make some noise. Woo! How low can your nose grow? How high can your legs stretch? Very high. Knowing you're a people water high. God's love is amazing. God's love is amazing. God's giving is amazing. All embracing love. Let's shout to Jesus. Shout to Jesus. Come on, everybody in the house, let's hear you. Don't be lazy, don't be crazy. Everybody going crazy. Come on, everybody, let's hear you make some noise. Woo! Dance wide.
I'll do that one naturally.
Dance wide. Dance low. Dance low. Dance low.
Well, this bit's hard. Tip, wide, high, tip, wide, high, tip, wide, high. Come on, everybody. Let's hear you make some noise. Woo!
Yes, Frank!
Oh, come on, don't be afraid. You dance more than that at the nightclub.
Shout to Jesus. Shout to Jesus. Everybody in the house, let's hear it. Don't be lazy, doesn't crazy. Everybody going crazy. Come on, everybody, let's hear you make some noise. Woo! Come on, everybody, let's hear you make some
Okay. Matt, do you want to be my PowerPoint driver for this next one? Now, I will be honest with you because I'm a great believer in the truth. These next two segments were completely ripped off from the Geelong camp. So, go Geelong! Okay. So one of the things that we've talked about at previous trainings, and it's in the material, I think it's in session 2, it talks about boundaries. Boundaries are really important on camp. Boundaries between us and the campers, boundaries between buddies and staff, boundaries between buddies and buddies, boundaries between girls and boys, all that sort of stuff. Just boundaries generally.
Didn't say anything about buddies and stuff. Woo!
No, that was definitely on my list. Yeah, that's what I reckon. So part of the whole boundaries thing, we're thinking about our duty of care. Now, duty of care is a phrase that it's one of those things that's almost, to a certain extent, lost its impact because you hear it so often in so many different situations. But Geelong put a nifty little presentation together for us to help us.
But we actually stole this.
So where did you guys rip it off from?
South Sydney.
South Sydney, rock and roll.
We stole it as well.
One of the great things about Southern Cross Kids Camps is we love to share resources and ideas. So I think there's 13 camps at the moment. We're looking at a 14th up in the Northern Territory next year. So it's all happening at the moment. So let's go to the next one. I'm waiting to see. So, duty of care. Now, obviously the South Sydney people didn't want to do too much work. So while they have got the words, what's the word? An acrostic. We're only doing the ones with the cap with its bold type. We're not doing all of them. You can fill in the blanks at home if you want to. So, D. Let's hit D. Dress. Don't dress like that. There's more to it than that. Go to the next slide, please, Mr. Briscoe. So, the way we're dressing on camp, there's a couple of things to keep in mind, and this is for everyone. Now, in this example, we have girls. And I think there is a boys one as well. I can't remember if there was a question to go with that, but it doesn't matter. I'll just keep going because I'm watching the time. The couple of things to keep in mind. One, you will probably be very active on camp. You'll be climbing on things, you'll be crawling through things, you'll be going on the giant swing, you'll be going on the flying fox, all that sort of stuff. So when you're choosing what to wear, it needs to be something that you can be comfortable in and move in too. Another thing to think about when we're on camp is we're trying to be really good role models for these kids. And for some reason, girls in particular seem to be very impressionable about the way they dress from older girls, particularly when there's that close relationship. And I'm always really careful when I talk about this because I'm a boy. It doesn't matter to me. I've never worn a short skirt, so it doesn't worry me at all. And I know that, not recently anyway, there's no photos of that event either, so don't even look for them. And I try to be careful too, because I know there's the argument that, I just feel really comfortable in that kind of stuff and I like looking good and all that sort of thing. But it's so important that we're showing these really impressionable girls and boys that as a woman, and I'll speak to the women in the room, sorry Eli, as a woman, what you have is not for sale, is probably a nice way of putting it. And it doesn't need to be for sale. You can be respected and loved and appreciated while dressing modestly at the same time. Now, you think about the role models that these young girls have. It's people like Beyonce. It's people like Miley Cyrus. Am I showing my age? No?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. I'm going to stop while I'm ahead. Not so much Shania Twain. What was the other one I was thinking of? You don't know. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, you know where I'm going. You watch those video clips, you see the way they dress on the red carpet and all of that sort of stuff. And the general rule seems to be the more flesh I can flash, the better. We don't want that on camp. We want these girls to know, and boys to know, that it doesn't have to be that way. For the girls, that they don't have to put themselves out there like that for boys to like them. And for the boys to understand that, hey, you know what? You don't actually have to expect that from girls either, because boys are looking at the same role models too. They see the girls in the really short skirts and the low-cut tops being called pretty, and so that's what they call pretty. Whereas if we can show them that you can dress modestly and still be respected and appreciated, then that's really important. No, I'll keep going. Next slide. So there's a boy one there as well. Oh, that's where we're going. So looking at this, it's pretty obvious. Which one would you say is really not suitable for camp? E, obviously. No, A's probably all right. Probably needs to brush his hair, get it out of his eyes. B and C, depending on the weather, I can guarantee you it will be cold. We'll be in Creswick at the first week of October. So singlet tops are probably not the right thing to wear. You might be okay, but once again it comes down to that role model. The pastor of my church, he wears a shorts and a t-shirt all year round. It could be -2 degrees outside. He'll still be in shorts and a t-shirt because he's crazy, and that's okay. But our kids aren't as well insulated as him. And if they see you guys, and I'll speak to the guys this time, walking around in singlet tops and shorts when it's only 3 degrees outside, and you might be okay and comfortable, but your buddy or one of your buddies, one of your campers in your cabin might be like, but I want to dress like that because my buddy dresses like that and he's really cool. And so your camper dresses like that, and then they get hypothermia. And that's bad. Trust me, I've been there. So always, when you're packing your bag, when you're thinking about what you're going to bring and what you're going to wear, think about how am I going to be presenting to these kids? What are they going to see when they look at me? What are those unwritten messages that they're going to get from the way that I dress? I'm just looking at the... All right, so there was a great little saying. What was my great little saying, Sharon? I can't remember.
Reach for the sky.
Reach. That's right. So the saying is, reach for the sky, touch your toes. If anything shows, out it goes. So there's a nice little rule. So when you're thinking about what am I going to wear, put it on, stand in front of the mirror, get a trusting friend in the room with you, and try that. Reach for the sky, touch your toes, and your friend will let you know if that's decent or not. And if it's a bit iffy, don't bring it. That's probably the easiest way to think about it. All right, let's keep going. Oh, comment, question, query, complaint? Oh, yeah, good point. Go back a couple, Briscoe. Yep, go back. Thoughts? I'm not a lady, so...
We suggested that both B and E were probably appropriate.
Yeah. I know you feel shoulders too. Yeah. And she's got her shoulders showing. We usually standing forward.
The shoulders out.
I find them acceptable to walk on their ankles.
No, A and B aren't. So it is kind of a bit of a grey area. It is kind of like there are, if I was to walk down the street now, some of those people I would think to myself, why aren't they wearing a jumper? It's too cold. But if the weather was warmer, there isn't any of those girls that I would think to myself, gee, they're dressing like a hussy. You're not really seeing that there. But thinking about the kind of activities you're going to be doing on camp, C's probably not going to work unless you've got some leggings or something, because you could be crawling and climbing and going on the flying fox and going on the giant swing. So the C outfit's probably not going to work. The A outfit, probably showing a bit too much midriff. I believe one of the SCKC things is you probably shouldn't be showing any midriff at all. And a bit of cleavage as well. And I'll leave that one where it is. Probably same problem with D. So B and E are kind of what we're looking for, I guess. Although keeping in mind, and you were talking about the shoulder stuff too. So. The shoulders out. Oh, well, I'm looking at it. It's not a singlety top though.
Like singlet ones I would say is inappropriate, but
I wouldn't send anyone home for dressing like that. I've never sent anyone home for the way they dress on camp. But we have in the past had a quiet word with people and said, look, you can put a jumper on or a t-shirt underneath or something like that. The footwear is another one. We didn't talk much about the footwear. You will be on your feet a lot at camp. Stilettos are not going to be appropriate, girls. I'm sorry. I know they make your calves look awesome, but they're not suitable for camp. And bring a couple of pairs of shoes, because there's every chance if the weather's a bit damp that your shoes will get wet or muddy or both. All right, go to the next one for us, Matt.
Yeah, sorry, Briscoe, you can't bring this stiletto.
Oh, you can bring them, you're just not wearing them. All right. So dress, no boobs, bum, belly or bulge. Sorry, I hate to say it, but no muffin tops. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Eli. Keep going. All right, touch. Touch is really important. One of the things that our kids desperately need is safe touch. I read about a study, it's done, I can't remember how long ago, but they were looking at premature babies. Now, both sets of premature babies were given all of the physical care they need. They were fed, they were changed, they were warm, all of that sort of thing. One group was regularly hugged, touched, cuddled, stroked, all that sort of stuff. The other group not, just when they were doing the changing and stuff. The group that had that extra physical contact actually developed at twice the rate of the group that didn't. So physical touch is essential for our kids. And for some of our kids, safe physical touch is something they need to learn because they don't know what that is. They've been told, if you love me, you will let me, and stuff like that. So we don't want to say to you, don't touch the kids. I'm not going to say that because that's not what we want. Go to the next slide. I'm just wondering what's on it. Oh, okay, we're still there. All right, that's all right. So things like the pat on the shoulder, the high five, the handshake. The boys in particular seem to love coming up with secret handshakes. I'll spend 10 minutes just practicing. Yeah, so girls, don't look. If you see the boys practicing secret handshakes, it's a secret. It's okay if the girls have them too. Kids are not allowed to sit on your lap, and you're not allowed to do shoulder rides and that sort of a thing because of the legs wrapped around you kind of a thing. But if they want to sit with you, have them sit right next to you. Side by side is really good. Is this where we do the canoe or is that coming up?
C.
Oh, C is the canoe. All right, so when we get to the canoe, we'll talk a bit more about the touch, which is the safety triangle. The safety triangle, I'm going to get Sharon and Chelsea to come and demonstrate the safety triangle for you.
But not like.
No.
So here's alright, here's alright, here's probably not alright. So on the back, across the top of the back, but brief touch, don't linger, and no lag.
That's for the chapel.
Yeah. But that's the triangle.
So it's just the idea to give you a bit of an idea. Now, we're not saying don't touch them anywhere else. I mean, otherwise, how do you do handshakes and high fives and stuff like that? One of the things I do a lot with the kids, particularly when we're in our dining room and the kids are sitting down, as I walk around, I'll put my hand on my shoulder as I lean down and talk to them and stuff like that. And that's fine, all of that. But just something to be aware of. All right, let's go to O. Oh, here we go. So side hugs. Oh, the side hugs. Eli, come and show me. We'll demonstrate the side hug. Now, obviously, a full-on hug is probably just a little bit too intimate, and we're not doing that. But the side hug is awesome. This is a side hug.
Yeah.
You still have lots of body contact, so it still feels like a hug. You're still holding the person close, but we're on the side.
Leave room for Jesus.
Leave room for Jesus. He needs a lot of space. He's standing there with his arms out like that. And short and quick, as Sharon was saying, don't linger. Some of the kids, yeah, we're probably there a little bit too long, but I've known Eli for a couple of years, so we're okay. So lots of touch, but don't linger on it. Some of the kids will want to, and will try to, want to maybe isn't quite the right word. Some of the kids will try and touch you in ways that are inappropriate. If they do, don't make a big fuss about it. Just gently redirect them and explain that, that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Can we do this instead? So you might get kids, rubbing your thighs and stuff like that, or want to sit on your lap. No, let's not do that. Shh, you two. Let's not do that. Hey, let's do a high five. We can do this. And make it clear that it's because it makes you feel uncomfortable. Don't say, ooh, yuck, I don't want to do that, because that straight away from them is going to be perceived as a negative. So even when you're kind of redirecting them, you want to make it clear, hey, I still reckon you're awesome. What you've just done does not change the way I feel about you, but I'd prefer not to do that. Can we do this instead? Most kids that do try that only need one or two redirections, and then they realise that's not how things work at camp, and then you're good for the rest of camp. What's the next one? Out in the open. This is a big one. So it's called lots of different things, but basically a leader and a child are not to be by themselves anywhere where nobody else can see them at any time. At any time. So there always needs to be at least two adults present. Now when we say present, we don't necessarily mean like this. So if Aaron's sitting talking to a camper over there on the couchy wooden thing over there, and I'm here, that's okay. I'm present. I can see. We're still out in the open. But if he and his camper decide they're going to go down the corridor into the other room, nobody can see them. You're not out in the open anymore, and that's a problem. So it means things like if you're in the dining room at meal times and your camper wants to go to the toilet, that's fine. You go with them and you make eye contact with the staff member as you go past and say, we're going to the dunny, and the staff member will come with you. If you're in your cabin with your campers and one of them wants to go and do some stuff, unless you know there's going to be other leaders there, hey, let's wait for someone else to come with us. You know, let's wait for Billy, he just needs to get his shoes on, then we can go together. Because then you've got 2 campers and 2 leaders. So that's really important. Some of the kids will get a bit weird about it. I remember one of my camps, my camper being very verbal with me about the fact that why won't I just leave him alone? Because he and a girl wanted to go off somewhere private and do private boy-girl stuff. And I made it very clear to him, yeah, shake hands, that's what it was. I made it very clear to him that he could go anywhere he wanted on camp, but I would be there with him, as would her buddy. So me and that young lady got to know each other reasonably well as we followed these 2 around for half of the camp. So that was great. Eli, you wanted to say something?
One thing you can find is if you're a buddy is sometimes everyone's going to leave, and sometimes you can actually end up being left alone in a room, and it's just you, and just completely accidental. Everyone's accidentally walked out, not realised that you and your camper are still there. Like, what's a good thing?
Yep. So the question is, if, and it does happen, it happens every camp, you've got 4 campers, 4 leaders in a cabin usually, sometimes 3. 3 of the campers bolt. They're out the door, we're going to games with coach, their buddies go with them, suddenly you've got 1 camper and 1 buddy left in the cabin, what do? You don't drag your camper out of the cabin and say we can't be in here because there's no one else here, you step out. So the cabins, most of the cabins have like a porch area out the front or something like that. You step out so that you are out in the open. Other people can see you. And if a staff member or a buddy that's loose sees a buddy standing outside a cabin like that, then that staff member will know, hey, there's somebody there that needs an extra person, and they will wander over and say, hey, Eli, how's it? Well, should wander over and say, hey, Eli, what's happening? Oh, we're just waiting for Billy. It takes forever to tie his shoes and he won't let me help. No worries, and we'll sit and chat with you while Billy gets his act together. Or whoever it might be.
I often find it's like better to always, whenever I've had it, I've always like tried to stand in the doorway sort of and have the door open as well.
Yeah, definitely have the door open, but basically it comes down to out in the open. If other people can see you, you're safe. And it's 2 things. One, we want to make sure we keep our kids safe. We have all the things that we do with our applications and references and interviews and things like that. But the fact of the matter is, camps like ours are the kind of camps where people that want to hurt kids go, or want to go. Because here's kids, that's what I want. So we're keeping the kids safe. I can say hand on my heart that up to this point, Southern Cross Kids Camp has not had that happen yet. So I'm really happy about that. But the other thing is, it keeps you guys safe. Because some of our kids have worked out how to work that system. And if you're in the cabin alone with your buddy for any extent, your camper, for any period of time, and then your camper goes home and says to their carer or their worker, my buddy did this and this and this to me. When did they do that? We were alone in our cabin, everyone else had gone, and then he, whatever. If you've got no one else there, you've got no comeback. All right? We know you're okay, but the accusation itself is enough to just wreck everything. Because unless you've got some proof that you didn't do anything, you haven't got any proof that you didn't do anything. And that whole process can just mess with your life forever. So it's about protecting them and it's about protecting you. I don't think that's ever happened on a camp either, so we're pretty good with regards to that. But 2D, never alone with a camper, privacy in visible places. So that's that idea. Aaron could be over there with his camper because they want to have a personal chat. Maybe the camper wants to talk about some feelings they're having or something like that. That's fine, we can see him over there. We can't hear him, doesn't matter. We can see him. And say that to the campers. They'll want to know, why can't we have some private time? Well, that's not how it works on camp. And for the most part, that gets you over the line with most of the kids. Look, I'd love to help you out, but that's not how it works on camp. We can't. Oh, okay. Stupid camp. That's fine. Blame the director. That's what I'm here for. All right, we better keep moving. C, the canoe. I love the canoe. The canoe's awesome. Once upon a time, completely unrelated tidbit of information for you, I actually trained as a canoeing instructor, so that's why I love the canoes. The canoe is this. This is your canoe. A great phrase to use, particularly when you're having fun with other buddies like we are tonight, is stay out of my canoe. This is your personal space. Can I borrow you, Matt?
Sure.
Thanks. So Matt gets his canoe ready, and I've got my canoe ready. Now, if we're like this is reasonably comfortable. We're side by side, but we're not in each other's canoes. However, if we do that, suddenly we're feeling a little bit awkward because we're in each other's canoes. Now, even if Matt's canoe's pointing that way, put your canoe up, and I'm not in his canoe, but he's in my canoe. That's a little bit awkward too, yeah? But like this, that's cool. We can stand back to back, and it's all groovy. Canoes are allowed to cross, yes, so...
If you're like this, that's okay, because they're crossing, but you're not in.
I'm not actually in his canoe. So if you're having some... Thank you, Matt. If you're having some personal space issues with your camper who just wants to sit on your lap and stuff like that, you can talk about the canoe. Hey, get out of my canoe. And the kids will love it. They'll think it's great fun. They'll say the same thing to you many more times than you will say it to them. Keep going. Oh, brushing. Sorry. Keep going. Canoes, personal space. Never get inside someone else's canoe. Crossing canoes is okay. Reporting. So one of the things that campers might want to do is tell you private, personal stuff, and that's fine. But they might say to you, can I tell you a secret? And you will say, sure. And then they will say, but you can't tell anybody. You cannot say, okay, I will keep your secret. There are some secrets that we just cannot keep. What you say to your camper is, look, if I think that you or someone else might be in danger or at risk, then I will have to tell someone. Now, sometimes your camper will respond to that by saying, okay, I don't really want to tell you anyway. And they'll change the topic and move on. That's fine. Sometimes they will tell you stuff, and it's stuff that the workers and that already know about. And that's fine too. Sometimes they will tell you stuff that nobody else knows about. And that's less fine. So if your camper wants to tell you a secret, that's fine, but I can't promise you that I will keep it a secret. If they tell you something and you're thinking, gee, that sounds like it might be a little bit sus, please come and talk to someone. Myself, camp counsellor, pastoral care people, anybody, any of the sort of, I was going to call them senior leaders, but yeah, we'll call it the care team. Come and talk to us and say, look, my camper's told me this. And do tell your camper that you're going to tell someone. We don't want them seeing that as a breach of trust because they told you a secret, and then Director Dan comes across and goes, hey, listen, your buddy told me this. And they're like, what the? Come on. You say to them, look, thank you for sharing that with me. I think we need to talk to someone about that. And feel free to take them with you too. Like, let's go and talk to Director Dan about that. I've only had one report made when I've been on a camp, and when I contacted because the first thing I will do is call the worker that works with the camper and say, this camper's told me this. Unless it's an immediate thing, in which case we go straight to the police, because that's just the rules. We just have to do that. So if the camper comes and tells me, tells you, I find out that they've told you some stuff, I will call the worker. The worker will either let me know, yes, we already know about that, that's why they're in foster care, or that was a while ago, that's in the courts, or yes, it's all on file, that's fine, it's theirs now, they do what they need to do with it. But if they say to me, oh, we didn't know about that, the whole mandatory reporting thing is I need to then contact the police. That's just the way it is. There's no way around that. There's been far too much, and we all know about the Royal Commission and all that sort of stuff. There's been far too much covering up, sweeping under the carpet. Oh, maybe it's not such a big deal, we won't worry about it. So SCKC has an absolutely zero tolerance philosophy for that sort of thing. If we find out that one of our leaders was reported to and didn't say anything, that person will probably not be allowed to lead on any of our camps ever again. Okay, so that's me being really serious, because it is really serious stuff. That's why these kids are in care in the first place, because someone has hurt them or something has happened to them. All right, I reckon we're nearly at the end of that one. We're nearly at the end of that one. That was really depressing. Let's do something less depressing. What's the next one? Oh, love this one. Go back to that folder. It's my favourite word from Geelong Camp. What is it? QARFLSR! Now some of you are like, what? QARFLSR. So go back to session 3. There should be something, bedtime routine.
Dad, I think Annie needs a chocolate sheet.
I have a chocolate. No, I brought it with me.
You brought your QARFLSR? Oh, nice. So I've got 20 more copies of QARFLSR. There you go. Yeah, go on. So QARFLSR is our bedtime routine. For various reasons, bedtime's a pretty big deal for our kids. They struggle. It's night time. Often the abuse and stuff's happened at night. If you're in a foreign place or with strange people, bedtime can be a real hassle. So Geelong came up with this amazing acronym, QARFLSR. You just can't forget it. All together now, QARFLSR. So, QARFLSR is what we're looking for in the cabins at night time. It's pretty straightforward. It's on your list for those that are getting it. I'll make sure it gets emailed as well. Quiet time. Cabin time is quiet time. Always. Throughout camp, cabin time is quiet time. Particularly for the boys. It does happen for the girls too. The boys love a bit of rough and tumble and carry on. That's fine, but not in your cabin. You know, if you're there during the day and they want to have a bit of a wrestle or... No, we're not going to wrestle. Want to play a throwy, catchy, jumpy game, that's great. Let's go outside and do it. So we really lock in that whole thing about cabin time is quiet time. That way at night time when we go back to our cabins, the kids aren't thinking in their heads, cool, we're back in the cabin, we get to do those fun games where we jump from one bunk to the other and try and break the beds or whatever it might be. So cabin time is always quiet time. That's the cue in QARFLSR. Atmosphere. Put calm music on. Geelong had CDs of Mozart-y type stuff. I'll probably do something like that too. But have just something quiet, calm in the background. Your taste in music probably run to things a little more exciting. I'm a big fan myself of the OC Supertones and a group called Ailstorm. Anybody familiar with Ailstorm?
Pirates.
Yes, pirate metal. Love it. I was teaching my grade 3 and 4 students pirate metal at a camp recently. But we're not playing pirate metal in our cabins at night time when we're trying to go to sleep. It's chill. It's chill. So atmosphere, a chilled atmosphere. And temperature you won't have much control over. I think the heaters kind of do their thing. Repetition and redirection. So that's the R of QARFLSR. So they'll be excited. Stuff's been happening. They've been doing things all day. They've been doing things they've never done before. They're having an amazing time and they'll just want to talk about it. And you want them to get and clean their teeth. And so they'll be carrying on. Let's pretend, Sharon, that you talk a lot. And you want to tell me stuff.
No, I don't. Hey, did you know I
Yeah, hey Sharon, it's time for tea.
Oh, okay. So, anyway,
Yeah, no, that's great, but it's time for tea.
Jay, sorry, have you ever been to
hang on, it's time for tea.
the best place in the whole wide world?
Yeah, I know, that's great. I'm glad you're cleaning your teeth. No, that's good. So you just keep repeating the thing you want them to do. Don't get in the argument. Don't start engaging with the side topics that the kids will bring up. Just keep repeating what it is. No, that's all right. Let's go clean our teeth. We're going to go and clean our teeth. Let's go and clean our teeth. For some of you, by the end, the time the kids are gone to sleep, you'll feel like banging your head on a brick wall because you've said, let's put our pyjamas on so many times. But that repetition and the redirection. So, hang on, let's go clean our teeth. Let's go and clean our teeth first. You know? Make sure you're pointing towards what it is that you want them to do. Focused attention. It's really easy at the end of the day. You've had a big day as buddies. Your kids are on their beds. Maybe they're chatting to each other and that sort of thing. It's really easy to just step back a little bit and just chat to the other buddies in the room. How's your day been? Oh, did you see that Hailstorm concert last week? Blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. While you're in the cabin with the kids, give them all of your attention. Literally like this. So your kids will be on the top bunks. Go and stand right next to the top bunk, so you're sort of this far away, and give them all of your attention. Because if they're talking to you, and you're talking in a quiet voice, they're more likely to come down to that level. If they're shouting to their friend on the other side of the room, then everyone in the room will be shouting, and that's not going to help us get them ready for bed. Eli knows about that. So focused attention. Make sure until the kids are actually asleep, they've still got your attention. Because if you think, I'll just walk away, even if they have to shout, hey buddy, I can't find my teddy. Well, instantly everyone else in the cabin that was nearly asleep is now awake again and going, I haven't got your teddy. Oh, shut the F up and all that sort of thing, and away you go. That's not hypothetical in case people were wondering. Lighting. Yeah. Oh. I've got some stories, I'm not going to tell them now. Lighting's important. A lot of our kids don't like the dark of night time. It makes them feel unsafe. So if you can organise once you're in your cabin group, some like ambient lighting, a night light, sometimes like Christmas lights that can go under a bed, not twinkly ones because they can be distracting, but just enough light so there's a bit of light in the room so they can still see enough. Like if I need to go to the toilet, I can see where I can go. I can still see my buddy sitting just there. I can still see a few things. So lighting's important. It says there, a body needs time to prepare for sleep. The gradual darkening of the environment can help. It says there about dimming the lights a full hour before bedtime. That's probably a bit optimistic. But the sooner you can get them down, the better. Because if all the lights are on, they're not going to go to sleep. So that we can bring them down. Often you turn the main lights off and just leave the bathroom lights on, or something like that. So if kids need to get up and go to the toilet, they can see. Yep.
So in terms of ambient lighting,
yep.
Is it provided or do we need to bring
so you'll need to bring something.
Right. Staying for the playing music.
Yep. But I'll probably organise the music because I'll just steal what Geelong did. They were great. But once you have your cabins, so once we've got all our kids, what will happen is, and we haven't got about half of our kids at the moment, once we've got all our kids, we'll sort out which kids are going together in terms of cabins, we'll sort out which buddies are going with those kids, and then we'll let you know. And we'll say, all right, you four are in a cabin together, and then it's kind of your responsibility as a cabin group to sort out who's going to bring what. Oh, I've got some Christmas lights at home I can bring. Great, I've got an old CD player that I don't use anymore, I can bring that. I've got decorations and that sort of thing. There will be a cabin leader allocated to each cabin, which will be a buddy who's done one of these camps before, and it'll be kind of their responsibility to make sure that everyone else knows what's going on. So there'll be more information on that as it comes. So QARFLSR, QARFL, QARFLSR, story time. One buddy reads to the whole cabin, rule, heads on pillows while the story's being read. Heads off the pillows, story stops. You only tell them a couple of times. There's some great Super Nanny stuff that I'm not going to share tonight because I run out of time. On YouTube about the bedtime routine. You just tell them quietly, I'll keep going when you put your head back on the pillow. The head goes on the pillow, you keep reading. And it's probably a good idea to keep going for a while after you think they're asleep, because they might not be. They might be still listening. It talks about the reinforcing and then the silence there. And then the last part of QARFLSR is retreat. Not as in fear and terror, but while two adults will stay on duty in the cabin at all times, the other adults will get a break. So we'll have a roster. So you get about 45 minutes each to come out of the cabin, go to what we call cabin 5, which is our leader's cabin. That's where you get to stash your Mars bars and your Tim Tams and your chocolate biscuits and your chips and your caffeinated drinks and all that sort of stuff. So we actually have a cabin that we call cabin 5 that is just for the leaders. And so when you've got your time out in the evening, when it's your rostered time out, you get to go there, hang out with each other, carry on, have a great time. If you get some free time during the camp, which all of our buddies will get some rostered buddy break, go to cabin 5, hang out, have a good time, enjoy yourselves. But it is just for leaders. Most of the time, the kids are like, what's going on in there? Nothing, boring leader stuff, you wouldn't be interested. Oh, okay, let's go. And they're off to the Flying Fox, they're not worried about it. But don't go, oh, we're going to cabin 5 and we're going to have Tim Tams and Coca-Cola and you don't get anything in your face. That's probably a bad idea. Laurie, you were going to add something?
The one phrase I've found to be the most suitable is, it's just a meeting that I've got to do.
Yeah.
After this camp.
Yeah, got to go to another meeting.
Yeah.
Stupid director, blah, blah, blah.
They'll catch on that.
Yeah.
Something they don't need to worry about.
And we joke about it, but by all means blame the director. If you can blame the director, it takes the heat off you. Suddenly you're on their side. Oh, look, I'd love to get up at 2 a.m. and go and throw rocks on the roof of the manager's house. That'd be awesome. But Director Dan really wouldn't like that, so we just can't, I'm sorry. Yeah, you know. Things to tell you, camper, they're allowed to get up in the night to use the toilet, and they're allowed to wake you up if you need anything. So you will be in the bunk below them when you're sleeping. So chances are, if they're getting up, you'll probably wake up anyway because they'll step on you as they get off the bunk. So that'll be nice. And there's a couple of things there. Consistency is key. It is so important that all the buddies in the room are giving the same message. If you've got 3 buddies going, nah, cabin time's quiet time, bro, we've got to settle. And one buddy going, oh, come on, why can't we just do some sock wrestling? Come on. Then it just messes everything up. You've got to be on the same page. And if there is something about that routine that is genuinely aggravating or upsetting a camper, change the routine. Okay, maybe there's a kid who that music just drives them nuts. They just can't deal with that music. Fine, turn the music off. It's no stress. Maybe there's a kid who has to have their torch, because if they don't have their torch, they're just going to lie there and scream all night. Fine, give them their torch. That's okay. So by all means, modify that routine to best suit the needs of your campers. And if you have any questions, ask the guys that have been on camp before. They'll have lots of experience with this sort of stuff. If you really get stuck, come and talk to one of what we'll call Matt's going to bring some of these around. Let's talk about the PACE model. Hands up if you've heard of the PACE model. Lots of people. Okay, Matt's got it right there. It comes from a book called, well, we got it from a book called From Isolation to Connection, which was produced, I think, by Berry Street or by the government or something, but I know Berry Street use it as part of their foster care training. It's all about engaging with the kids when they're starting to get a bit disengaged, or helping them to co-regulate when they're starting to get a bit dysregulated. I'm just going to give you that to have a read of, and we're going to move on. We'll talk more about it next time, because it'll be important. Okay, role plays. So what we need, we're going to need groups of, I think, 5 for the next sort of role plays. But I'm going to set some rules around my groups, Sharon. Each group must have a combination of people that have done one of our camps before and people that haven't.
And camper, buddy, staff. Okay? And hey, Matt, I heard you. Hey, Matt, like
That was exciting. Questions, comments? It was quite confusing. Could you...
Okay, so to explain, in my little instructions on how we're supposed to act as the annoying antagonistic camper, so I was told not to listen to my buddy, and I was told to keep going even when a staff member came up, unless they gave clear potential consequences for me not stopping my behaviour. I think that's what it is. One staffer involved, don't comply until the clear potential consequence becomes clear.
Okay.
Which, it didn't happen, so I just kept going.
So, for those that have been on camp before, what kind of clear potential consequences could have been made clear at that time?
Calm down. They might have needed to go out of J zone for a little while, because it looked like she probably wanted to be in J zone, so being taken out may have been an option for a little while. I was down at the back of Buckland for a little while, something like that.
Be more like I'm doing a run down the street.
Yeah.
What other consequences? I mean, so, come out of J zone. What else can we do? I mean, we obviously can't threaten to rip their arms off and beat them around the head.
So maybe down to their level and just starting to talk really calm, quietly, maybe trying to have a conversation that is away from what's being focused on.
In that particular scenario, though, what the camper was looking for was a really clear, if you don't stop, this is what's going to happen.
Is there a potential to send home?
Yes.
Or is that too much? Yeah.
Yes, we have sent campers home. You've got to get pretty far along the thing for that to happen. So I wouldn't use that in that situation.
But definitely missing out on things. Like we're gonna have to go out of J zone until you're quiet, or if you go out of J zone, you're gonna miss out on the gift that Grandma and Grandpa have to give to you. So you have to stay in J zone right until the end, or we're not going to be able to sit next to Matt next time. Because we have other things they didn't have in mates, so they actually kind of did a lot of stuff together. So I think separating them may not have been an option, as in like completely, but separating them in J zone, so you could then see, okay, Sharon and Matt just can't be sat next to each other. So in order to protect Matt from Sharon, so you focus on your buddy, your camper, you focus on your camper, and maybe make sure that you're sat at opposite ends of the J zone, so that you've got 15 other people in between you.
For some kids, sometimes a call home can be a consequence. For other kids, a call home is a reward. It becomes an incentive. And it can work both ways. You could almost use exactly the same words, but if you don't stop, we're going to have to call home. Or if you stop, we can call home, depending on what you know about the camper. And you get a little bit of information about your camper, not stacks, but the camp counsellors and the care team people will know a bit more, so they'll know whether that's suitable or appropriate for those kids. But the missing out on the next activity, the having to leave J zone, the not getting to say goodbye to Lucy at the end of J zone. There's lots of really weird stuff that the kids get really hung up on, and it can become we'll have to go outside and then you won't get to see Lucy. But I really want to see Lucy. Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Give that team a big clap. Okay.
Campers, staff. Staff. I'm the facilitator. So what's just happened is it's the last night of camp, and the campers have had a really fun and memorable day, and the buddies have just gone to cabin 5, and now the staff are in the cabins.
Hey guys, how good was camp? It was so good! Yeah! Oh yeah! It was so good!
Comments, questions, queries?
Do you know what I liked was that you had focused attention on each of them. So you're not going to necessarily stop them from being excited, but you can stop them from shouting at each other. So rather than trying to get both of their attention and saying, both of you stop, what seemed to work better is when you both went in and just focused and separated them and focused on both of them.
Legitimately calm. Yeah, no, it was like I had to go and make a mental thing to go, okay, I need to ignore him even though I don't want to.
Any other thoughts?
Thought that the second staff member maybe waited a little bit too long before.
I was doing a couple of minutes. Yeah, mine said I had to keep going until the second staff
in real
member.
life, I think you waited that long. think probably sits about a bit too high.
Yeah, definitely.
Started to separate things.
And that's, I mean, you're working with a specific set of instructions, but definitely in those situations. And it is something that has happened, is that people do hesitate because they're not sure. If you're not, particularly as a staff member, if you're not sure, offer to help. Hey, can I help? The buddy will let you know whether they want you to help or not. They might say, no, it's all good, we've got it. All right, no worries, walk away. Or they might go, yeah, that'd be great, thanks. And then you jump in. All right, fantastic. Now, for the next activity, what I might get is...
Yes, I was going to ask the same.
You really want to do yours?
No, what are you chocolate?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. How could I forget the chocolate? All right, one more thing to do before we finish up. And this will definitely favour those that have previously read section 3 in the training manual. So, come over here, sitting at the tables. If you have a phone with some data on it or something like that, I'm going to give you a website to log into.